It's great to have so many of you with us today, and we're also delighted so many are coming to our next Global Bottled Water Congress in Evian. My name is Richard Hall, and I'm the chairman of Zenith Global, and I'm joined by our Insight and Advisory Director, Anne Wong-Irvin.
Hi, everyone.
I'll speak first about the Evian Congress, and Anne will then present some market insights. We'll conclude with your questions and hopefully some of our answers. We'll try to keep to the 20-minute time frame. So what about our Congress? It's our 15th. It's on the 22nd to the 24th of October in Evian-les-Bains, which is close to Geneva Airport if anyone's arranging flights. Our theme is Healthier People, Healthier Planet. These are the big issues. We have some fantastic sponsors, Arda, Berrycaps, Sidel, Tetra Pak, and Ice Water Management. We're already close to our expected 150 delegates. A highlight will be the 2018 Global Bottled Water Awards, for which there have been many entries, which are just closing. You may scrape an entry in if you're very, very quick. Full program details and online booking are on the Zenith Global website. I mentioned that it's our 15th Congress. We've traveled the world and seen many amazing bottling plants. And after all the recent investment at Evian, it's wonderful to be invited back where we held our first Congress. So for our program, we'll visit the Evian bottling plant and its catchment plateau and biogas facility. We'll have a chance to see ice water management nearby. Our conference topics include the agenda for a healthier future, including a professor who's an expert in hydration. We'll have a focus on sustainability. We'll be looking at market opportunities around the world and creating amazing value. We'll be talking to new entrepreneurs and having a next generation of entrepreneur shootout. And there will be a water stewardship workshop, which we haven't done before, but it's becoming an increasingly important issue. All the key global players will be speaking, including both global chief executives of Nestle Waters and Danone Waters. We also have 4 more of the biggest players in the world, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Niagara, and Bisleri from India, plus premium water leaders like Essentia and Voss, as well as newcomers. It should be a brilliant event for all the latest trends, what's emerging, and some very important networking. And now a taster of some of those trends, and you'll be sent all the slides afterwards. Over to Anne.
Thank you, Richard. So I thought I would give everyone an understanding of the global soft drinks market to start with, and then move into bottled water. And we'll close with some of the highlights that we're seeing here with regards to bottled water and its influence on the soft drinks market. So firstly, if we put bottled water in context and all of the soft drinks in terms of the market size and growth in 2017, what we're seeing being the high growth categories include still over 10 liters and energy drinks, along with ready to drink tea, flavored water, sports drinks, which isn't surprising because there is a growing interest in functional beverages and beverages that are positioned close to where water is providing that same hydration, healthy benefit and perspective. What's interesting on the right side is that the fast growth categories, still over 10 liters, as well as still up to 10 liters, are both bottled water categories. And at the bottom there, you see carbonates, which is carbonated soft drinks, slowing in terms of growth, but in terms of the total volume, still very relevant in the market. Towards the end, what I'll show is the convergence of these categories and how some of the innovations that we're seeing in the market are still picking up on some of those carbonate cues, but that it's picking up also on the healthy wellness trends that we're seeing high growth within the soft drinks market.
I'm not going to stop you, Anne, but if anyone has any questions coming through, please do send them to us as we're speaking. You can pick them up at the end as well. But if you've got any thoughts or questions on any of these slides, please do send them through.
So if we're looking at per capita consumption, what is interesting here is that, again, similar to the first slide, we're seeing plain water being one of the fastest growing per capita consumption, but really not at the detriment of any of the other categories. This shows us that in terms of per capita consumption globally, there aren't any particular beverage categories that are losing out, more kind of slowing down in terms of growth, with plain water leading the way in terms of highest growth. And again, it reinforces that consumers and in terms of consumption is really looking at plain water as leading that the soft drinks market, but that none of those categories are losing share in terms of share of throat. And breaking down further in terms of the soft drink segment, what we see is that, again, bottled water is certainly leading the way here. Soft drinks have added an extra 157 billion liters over the past 5 years, but bottled water is actually adding 75% of this growth. Now, keep in mind in terms of this chart, bulk water is included in bottled water. And if we were to remove bulk water, that leads to bottled water adding an additional 24 billion liters, so closer to ready-to-drink tea. But what is interesting is that both bottled water and ready-to-drink tea are growing and adding to the soft drinks market. And later on in terms of the innovation is showing how both of those categories are taking cues from each other. If we get right into bottled water, looking at plain, flavored, and functional as the total category, it is growing at a compound annual growth rate of 7% over the past 10 years. And plain water continues to be a large portion of this market share. So it has 97 volume share. However, all three categories in terms of plain, flavored, and functional are growing. But again, plain is growing much faster than flavored and functional. So flavored and functional still are niche categories in the total bottled water category, but all three categories are growing. If we specifically look at some of the regional changes that we've seen, what is really interesting over the past 10 years is that you see between 2007 and 2017, you have the market that has almost doubled in size, but particularly Asia Pacific is owning almost double what there and half of that total category. So that is quite interesting in terms of Asia Pacific now being one of the biggest opportunities. If we look at the per capita consumption comparison to this volume share, Asia Pacific per capita consumption is only still at 43 liters versus, for example, North America, which remains to be the highest per capita consumption, even though from a volume share perspective, it doesn't look as big as Asia Pacific. And I think this highlights the opportunity that you see in terms of Asia Pacific going forward. If we look at specific countries, China is certainly leading the way, followed by Indonesia and India. What's interesting here is that of the top 10 growth countries, 4 of them are in Asia Pacific. USA is representing North America, and then you have 2 from Central and Latin America and 3 in Middle East and Africa. All of the pack sizes, it includes all of the pack sizes within plain. So some of the main drivers in terms of the growth, particularly for the top 3 growth markets, are within bulk water. But there are different drivers of growth according to the different countries. This could be urbanization, water as a necessity in that country, and also health and wellness and shift in consumption habits. So the variety of the different reasons for growth in each of these countries are what we try to look at in terms of determining our international expansion strategies for our clients. And it highlights that each of these markets, although all growing, are growing for different reasons. So touching upon, just towards the end, touching upon some of the key trends that we're seeing in the market. Firstly, the convergence of bottled water and soft drinks, and then ending with functional wellness. In terms of convergence of bottled water and soft drinks, the first thing that we're seeing here is that a convergence of product categories. At the top, what you see are major bottled water brands that are now moving into tea or infusions or flavored water products. And towards the bottom is that also that soft drinks are taking cues from bottled water, or that bottled water is actually looking more like soft drinks and presented in a way that is a replacement for example, carbonated soft drinks or juice products in the market. And this leads to product portfolio diversification. So what is really interesting here is the brand expansion that you're seeing in terms of innovation, keeping the same brand, but moving into beyond water. So for example, Perrier moving towards more juice-infused products, and then Glasso with its portfolio of different products going beyond water. And then finally, in terms of one of the examples here that is quite interesting is we're noticing that dairy companies are moving into beverage side as well in terms of particularly protein water. So here is an example of Arla, but also a brand called Upbeat in the UK that traditionally has competed within the breakfast beverage category, is now moving into protein water as well. And I think in terms of convergence of product categories and also the focus in terms of sustainability and the use of PET, we're also seeing bottled water using a plethora of different product packaging. So really good example at the top, visually you see the change in terms of, even though One Water still has the PET formats, it has recently introduced can and carton formats. And just towards the bottom, a variety of different products that are in the market that almost mimics some of the soft drinks category, but still staying true to the hydration of water categories. And finally, in terms of functional wellness, I think consumers are moving towards wanting more than just hydration. So it's the theme of Hydration Plus. And what's interesting for us here is that previous slides kind of highlighted that water or some of the soft drinks categories are converging, but mainly in the juice, ready-to-drink tea, and carbonated soft drinks with plain and sparkling water. And I think there is an opportunity for growth in terms of the functional wellness category, in terms of how water can lead innovation around perhaps the sports and energy drink sectors, and changing that traditional view of sports and energy drinks, particularly in terms of alkaline waters or even caffeine waters that are highlighted here. Finally, just in terms of the data that was presented here, if you would like to see more in-depth information, Global Drinks is the source where most of this data has come from. Additionally, we present a lot of this information through insightful and topical reports. And finally, if you have a specific question, we'd love to hear from you in terms of some of the interesting work that you've been doing and how Zenith can help you there.
Okay, thank you, Anne. We have some questions. The first one of which is, what is functional bottled water?
Functional bottled water. So in terms of the way that we have our category definitions, this would be bottled water, but with an added functional benefit to it. So for example,
that's the point, it's added functionality. It's not natural functionality, because most waters have some natural function.
Exactly. So so this is added functionality. For example, it could be vitamins being added to water, and that would be an example of that.
And that last slide had quite a range of additional things as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts regarding new types of packaging like cartons and aluminium in the water segment? What about plastic as well?
Yeah, I think PET will remain relevant. I think Evian has come out to say that they'll be using all their bottled water will be 100% using recycled plastics by 2025. So I think PET will still be.
And there are lots more initiatives, aren't there, with quite demanding targets of 50% rPET, 70% rPET.
Definitely.
But people seem to prefer or seem to want paper, and then they want answers on plastic, don't they?
Yeah, so I think PET would definitely still be relevant. But I think some of the examples that we had here in terms of cans and cartons are quite interesting, particularly with some of the cans where there's resealability with cans, which gives almost the same functionality as PET bottles.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that PET has such an important role to play, and if we can find as an industry the answers on collection and recycling, and new materials, then I think a lot of consumer concerns can be answered over time. Lots more questions. What about plant-based waters?
Plant-based waters, I think that is still a niche, but growing. It kind of leads back to the presentation around convergence of categories. Again, most of some of the products that we see, for example, coconut water or products where there's a water tag added to the product, we would look at it from a juice perspective. Yeah. But it is using the benefits of how consumers see water as a way to market itself.
Okay, is bottled water ozonated at the final step to maintain an ozone residual in the final product? We're not very technical, are we?
No. that is a question.
We do have the expertise in the business, but not in the room. So we'll have to get back to the questioner on ozonation. What about the repartition of the market according to natural and artificially carbonated water? Oh, there's not very much that's naturally carbonated, is there? There are very few. No. So almost all of it is added sparkling. There are relatively few brands. I think it's only about 2 or 3 main ones. Yeah. That are naturally sparkling. Yeah. Can we download your presentation? Yes, you can. Well, in fact, you can't. No, we're going to send it to you. That's how you can get it. What about protein-added waters?
I think that's coming, coming to fruition with the functional wellness sense. So some of the examples that I had just shown, particularly dairy categories, dairy manufacturers getting in on protein water, and so that's quite interesting.
There are a whole load of new niches coming, aren't there?
Yeah.
And one of the confusions is the use of the word water when they're not really waters, there are so many ingredients with degrees of functionality, which some of them are lifestyle accessories and some of them have functionality which can't yet be claimed. So there will be challenges in communication and labeling and so on, won't there?
Yeah.
Premium bottled water, which country has the biggest growth? Oh, that's a tricky question. I'm not sure the answer to that.
That's a good question, and you might just have to come to the
we better answer it. You've got a report coming out there.
We have a report coming out, and we'll be doing a presentation around premium water as well as pH water at the Global Congress.
So I haven't even seen this report yet, but it's coming out in time for the Evian Congress. So turn up to that, and you may find out which is the fastest growth. Which do you think it is? Is it going to be the United States?
That is my first.
In volume and value, it must be.
Yeah.
But
my first inclination.
Mind you. I've just been in China for the last couple of weeks, and there's a new premium price segment in the mainstream that's been created recently, and there are super premium waters. And I paid some very big bills in restaurants for some waters, which probably would make people in some of Western Europe smile at the height of them. When you look at functional waters competing with plain waters, or do you think that will change the view of the market?
So, that's an interesting question. I think that functional waters, to some extent, would be competing with plain water, but I think it would. I guess it depends on the consumer view and orientation to it, how it's presented, but more so, I think, around sports and energy versus potentially plain.
One key learning we've had in the last few years is that bottled water doesn't compete as much as we all thought it competed with tap water. And that it's the choices during the day, the convenience and everything else. And so often water is a more local, more natural, lower calorie, good for you product than some of the other things people are consuming. Would you look at, oh, so I missed that one. We've already done it. What makes a bottled water luxury versus not luxury?
So I guess you could look at it 2 ways. It kind of relates to the premium water question earlier. But I think the other part of luxury or not luxury is that where we're seeing high bottled water growth in some of those markets that I had presented, for example, Indonesia and India, that, in those markets is growing because bottled water is to some extent a necessity in those markets. And so bulk water is where it's driving the growth, and less so in terms of individual or smaller pack size bottled water.
We're running out of time now. A question on sparkling water and SodaStream. and the opportunities in sparkling water, because sparkling water has been growing, but not as fast as plain water.
Yeah.
And yet in North America, it's been growing very fast in the last few years, but from a small base.
Yeah, from a small base, definitely led by North America. We see that it will continue to have double-digit growth in that region, and lots of innovation on the sparkling side there, and lots of infusions, moving away from unsweetened, but still providing flavor.
Because another one is unsweetened flavored water that seems to have had, you know, a big moment in the United States. Not quite so much elsewhere.
I think it's taking its, well, what's interesting is that I think it's taking its cue from unsweetened ready-to-drink tea a little bit, where we didn't used to see that type of product in Europe or North America, and it's more prevalent in Asia Pacific. Now we're seeing that transfer over. So I think consumers are getting a better understanding or having the palate for unsweetened flavored beverages. Yeah.
We're going to have to close that, and you're going to have to come to Evian. So 22nd of October, we still have some places, but not very many, it has to be said. We're very delighted with the response we've had. The slides, we will be emailing you with details and access to the slides. Thank you very much for coming and participating. Many friends, many colleagues, many clients, and hopefully some new partners in the industry. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Anne, and hope to see many of you at Evian.
Looking forward to it.